fantastic to have you on the podcast today, Craig. We met a number of years ago at a networking event and we were talking about football.
Indeed.
We were. And at that stage, you were, as you are now, the Managing Director of Kilic Engineering.
Correct. Well, General Manager. Jason, who owns the business, he's the Managing Director. So I'm the next down the chain, if you like, and have been since 2018. So into my 8th year here at Kilic Engineering. And it's been an interesting journey. So Kilic Engineering is first of all, Kate, thanks for having me on and inviting me.
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, Kilic Engineering is a mechanical engineering company that manufactures and designs conveying equipment. Probably the biggest sector we deal with is the agricultural sector. So it's an interesting and fun business to be in because we design things and then we build them and then we go and see the customer and deliver them. So it's actually, in that respect, for me, quite rewarding because you're making stuff.
Yeah.
Which is good.
So there's a lot of reward for everybody in that, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We find even our subcontractors, which we use to assist us with fitting hydraulics and electrical systems, their employees, they like coming here because they get to see a product be assembled from, nice shiny painted parts and end up being a fully functioning self-propelled machine. So yeah, most of the people that work here get quite a bit of satisfaction out of building something, loading it on a truck and then getting out in front of a customer.
Fantastic. That means you probably have a fair bit of retention?
We do okay with retention, yes. And I think that has, I'm sure as with any business, it's been up and down. I think certainly when I started, it was a challenge. Business is 50 years old this year. It started in 1975. So you can imagine, Jason's father who started the business, the mentality in the late 20th century was people would start with a business, even as early as being an apprentice and potentially be there 30 or 40 years later. And so that was one of the things we had to change to keep people, was to realise that these days people stay for 3 years, 2 years, and we had to get our mind around that. And when people desired to move on, our objective was to make sure that they walked out the door, if that's what they chose to do, having a good experience at our company and spreading the word, therefore, about working for us. And that's really, I guess, that change in mindset has helped us a lot. We tend to keep people much longer than 3 years because we're focused on every year trying to listen to what will make their life at Kilic better.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's what people want. They want to be heard.
Yeah.
They want to be heard, and they've all got opinions about how you can do things better because they do care about the workplace they work in.
That's for sure. You're right.
Yeah.
That's right. And they do. They want it to be safer. They want to find ways to do things easier. And so we have, an ongoing kind of conversation, if you like, KPI, where we're trying to have conversations with people regularly through every week and every month. And we also do, annually, like most businesses, a bit of a look back performance review.
Yeah.
And the result of, I guess, the annual program is I end up with a big list of things that people think KE can do better. Individuals end up with a short list of things they can work on. And then we measure that again 12 months later and see how we did.
Yeah. So it's a two-way conversation.
Correct.
Which is fantastic. And one of the things that you did during COVID has impressed me no end. I think it was a genius move and I think it was an incredibly generous move. And it was a hire that you made in 2020? 2021?
I think it was September 2021, if it's the one I'm thinking that you're thinking of. Yeah.
So you're looking for staff, and where did you find somebody?
Well, it's a funny story, right? In terms of how I got to looking where I ended up looking, if I can explain that. 2021 for all businesses, I'm sure, Australia was in full employment. And, for the first time in the history of Kilic Engineering, we were having people come on the books that were or coming for interviews, that were, I guess, fitting that stereotype. They were trying to tick the box so that they could get their unemployment check. And we had people start in the business and leave shortly thereafter. We had people for the first time, stealing things and being caught, genuinely doing the wrong thing. And obviously our response was to terminate them. And amongst all that frustration, I thought, we're dealing with these people that literally should be in jail. And that got me thinking, well, hang on, there's a lot of people coming out of jail. I wonder if they're any good. So what I did is I rang a friend of mine who happened to be working for the Department of Corrections at the time in their administration section, procurement, something like that. And I said to her, look, are there any programs in the prisons? Is there any way of getting in touch with the people on the ground to see if there's anyone coming out that may have skills that we could use in our business? About a week later, she came back to me with a contact at the pre-release centre, which is up in Grand Junction Road.
Mm-hmm.
And so I rang the gentleman there who was in charge of pre-release prisoners. He sent me through a resume of a young ex-offender, which was kind of had a base of skills that we felt we could build on. And so we invited both the prison representative and the prisoner down to our office and did a full, an interview, as we would do with any candidate, and decided that we'd like to give this young person a crack. And so it was that part of it was fairly normal, how we recruited the individual, and then how we assessed the individual, and then how we made the offer. The complication came when the reality of this person still being incarcerated, came to bear, right? So that meant a court had to approve or issue a warrant to allow this person to attend our workplace. And then it was also restricted in terms of the times and then who that person could contact while outside, and a whole bunch of other different things that made it pretty tricky. And so, which was all very new and kind of, frankly, quite challenging for us. So the prison employee put us in touch with WorkSkill, who have, I guess, done this kind of administrative part of having prisoners out in the world regularly. And they just helped us navigate all the way through it. And then subsequently, they've been involved in, helping us recruit other ex-offenders. So that was the decision we made, to start with this first person. And that's how they ended up working for us.
It's fantastic. And what's the experience been?
So it was very good, right? So during the time that the ex-offender was employed with us, he was released from prison and had to navigate, getting back into the free world, find a place to live, realise that he needed to, I guess, improve and demonstrate improvement in his skills and his versatility in our workplace, so we'd be motivated to increase his remuneration so he could afford to do more things outside of work, and he did all those things. He was a very, very good worker. He was a very, very nice and personable young man. And I worked alongside him, fitting motors and doing all sorts of different things. So it was a really good experience. And I think, he fitted in well. And I think he, slowly, I guess his story got out amongst our people. I guess they never held it against him. They always, I guess, were supportive of what he was trying to do with his life. And he was very appreciative of that. So, it was a good experience.
And is he still working with you?
No, he moved on. He went, we're still in touch with him. He works for another steel fabricator, so just doing straight out steel fabrication. Excuse me. So he was, left on good terms, and we're still in touch with him. We tried to get him back, but he's doing probably more of the things that he enjoys at another place.
What a fantastic story, though.
I was there. It was good.
It's just so good because
it was a lot of fun. I think as his story got out, and we had, if I can indulge you with a funny story, we had one of our kind of longer serving employees who's always quick-witted and good for a joke, and because we have a lot of different people working at Kilic, we had a young Vietnamese graduate engineer, Australian now, but originally from Vietnam, And he came down to talk to our longest serving employee, and he said, I hear this fella he's still a prisoner. You know, he goes back to prison every day. And our fellow says, well, yeah, he did. And the young engineer says, well, what did he do then? You know, how come he's our fellow says, he killed a couple of young engineers that kind of annoyed him. And our poor engineer's face went white. And he raced back upstairs, and we had to follow him up there and reassure him that everything was okay.
Nothing like the Australian sense of humour.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But what a gift that you've provided to him, to trust him, because I anticipate that lots of people, no matter what crime they did, if you've been incarcerated, coming out and being accepted back into the workforce is a difficult thing.
It is. It totally is. And we had, after we took this person on, we did have some interesting conversations about it. So, okay, this young man has worked out well. What are we up for here? Would we take, sort of a sexual offender? Would we take a murderer? Would we take this? Would we take that? And so it was at times awkward to try and discuss, what we would be willing to take a risk on. And what I was kind of pleased about was that the conclusion of those discussions we're going to put them through the same kind of recruitment process as anyone else. And if we think they can perform and they're stable and they can do the job and they have what it takes once they get out, to meet the challenges of what being free throws at them, then we would take the risk, right? So, that's the approach we've taken.
That's fantastic.
It's just, which I think was, that wasn't my directive or anything. That was what we all kind of concluded collaboratively, that let's put them through the rigor of the recruitment process and see how that turns out.
Yeah. And how did the team respond to this arrangement?
Well, like I said, it was pretty positive, right?
Yeah.
So the team has since then always been supportive. I think the truth was they were feeling the frustration as much as I was with dealing with the people that really we didn't want to take on, but we're running out of options, kind of things. And from that base, there was support for it because this was a good option.
Yeah.
It actually gave us a pool of potential candidates that we weren't looking at before, and so it was, it was perceived as a solution, right?
Yeah. So I imagine that when he was incarcerated, there were some strict rules about what he could or couldn't do, like leaving your premises or whatever. Were there rules like that, or did he have?
Absolutely, yeah. So, and they were able to. The more he had to earn the trust, right?
Yeah.
So, absolutely, when he initially was working with us, he was only allowed to go from the prison on the bus to our premises and return the same way. He, for him to go to the lunch bar and buy a sandwich was forbidden. For him to work, 1 minute longer than his assigned shift was not allowed. And for him to kind of have visitors and contact with people, he couldn't do that either. So he was only supposed to be at our premises. And as he proved himself, he was, those little things were lifted. And then ultimately he was released, and he had still some conditions, and then slowly got used to being free and doing all those things.
And I imagine that transition was probably transferring from being incarcerated to not being incarcerated was possibly easier because he was transitioning it through a workplace that was the stable environment that he was going to every day.
For sure, Katie had his difficulties, and so we said to him, this is the stable place. If you make this the kind of rock in your life and perform here, you can bank that, if you like. And when you're challenged with things outside of work, new relationships, temptations that you've been kind of barred from seeing in your prison life, trying to get your driver's license back, trying to find a place to live, the stable thing is going to be the relationships you build here, and and the work, right? That's the regular part of your life. So in that case, as you say, that was a kind of a stable place for him.
Yeah. And did that help him in that transition, do you think?
Well, yes, it did. I mean, he would often reflect that, you know, he loved coming to work, that it was a great bunch of people that he was working with. And yeah, so, and he certainly used the business as the springboard for not only how he got his personal life back in order, but then also his career, right? So
Yeah.
from here to something else. So
Yeah. And I anticipate without that support, many people who have been incarcerated might find it quite difficult, one, to gain employment, find accommodation, you know, a whole host of things.
yeah, well, I learned subsequently, Kate, you're quite right. The two things that are most critical to a prisoner being successful after their release are a stable job
Mm-hmm.
and finding a place to live. If they can tick those two things off, they have a really good chance.
Yeah. And so have you gone down this path again?
Yeah, we have. And I think I should say that, you know, the person that started this business, Jason's father, was a refugee who came to Australia with an empty suitcase, literally. And so, you know, that was one of the reasons we were able as a business to be open to this idea of taking ex-offenders, because the business has always taken on all kinds of different people and openly welcomed people and tried to help them, just as part of how the business started. And so that's made it quite easy once we had success to go and have another look. And, you know, we're, as I kind of alluded to before, we're quite picky. We're looking for a particular set of skills, and we pay closer and closer attention, you know, to, I guess, to whether people have that ability and that willingness to succeed and that drive to succeed once they're released.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been down that path to, you know, right to this day. We have 3 ex-offenders in our employee list across, I guess, various degrees of qualification. We have one who's performing as a trade assistant. She's doing well. We have, and then a couple of qualified tradespeople that are also performing well in the business.
That's fantastic. What I do love about it so much is I'm just acutely aware that for a lot of people who've been incarcerated, it's sort of like they never get to recover from that. We as a community can be very cruel, and we cannot trust. If you've been incarcerated, the chance of retrusting that person and giving them a second go doesn't always happen. We don't, even though we say you've done the time, it's like, but have you? Like, you've done the time, and then we're going to make you suffer a bit more. And this stops that. Like, it provides people with that real hand up, but in a really practical, valuable way, which is a win-win.
Yeah, certainly it has been a win-win. And you're right. We have typically with every ex-offender we've taken on, they have to find accommodation. We hear every time I go to apply for a rental place, and we try and support that by giving references and anything we can do as a company, as we do for all our employees. And the thing we hear every time is, oh, they just Googled my name and crossed me off the list, right? So they always need assistance to find accommodation, right? Just because, as you say, society just Googles their name and says, well, they've been in jail, so been convicted of something, so we're not going to take the risk.
And it's a really interesting thing. The whole reason that we incarcerate people is apparently so that they learn the lessons, so that they are less of a risk, and yet we don't believe that.
Yeah, well, look, I think in fairness, if you're a landlord or if you're an employer, certainly my job is to manage the risk of the business. You know, employing people is one of the highest risk activities you do. So I kind of get it, right? It is a difficult cohort of people to contemplate bringing into your business. The truth is that if we weren't so desperate, we probably wouldn't have done it, right? And I think we're glad that we did. I don't know that I'd call it genius as you have. It certainly has worked out for us quite well.
Well, I think it's genius in the moment in that there was a demand, you found a workaround that worked for you. But in doing that, and you managed the risk, so it was not like you went in blind and you've managed the risk. So in that sense, I think it is genius. But also, there's the humanity of it. It's generous and it's seeing people's humanity, and we can all stuff up, and just some people stuff up in a way that's bigger or more public or whatever. But there's none of us that are without sin of some sort. We've all done something. God, I don't want to tell you about the things I did when I was a teenager, driving when you might have probably not have should have been driving, and things like that, which I don't think kids do as much these days.
Probably not that much, like I said at the very beginning of the story, the difference is, these people were caught, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When we get to look at these people, the difference is we know for sure what they've done as opposed to we're guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if the intention of incarcerating people is to help them not reoffend, which I'm not convinced that the system works in that way, but anyway, but if that's the intention, then it's not fair if we don't actually provide them with an opportunity to demonstrate that they have learnt from these mistakes and this time out of society has been successful. And we do have an issue with then recidivism and things like that, and we've got to think about, well, how do we support them? So, and it's fantastic that there's a program that makes that also accessible. So it's without work skill and some of those other organisations that would have been a much more difficult process. But there are rules, there's a system, it works. And I've got, as a result of you doing this, I've got a very good friend who has since hired somebody through that process for their workplace, and again, it's been successful. And it's not going to work every time. I appreciate that, but I think that the rigorous, putting people through their paces and just treating them as though they're somebody applying for a job and doing all the normal things, you're going to get good outcomes if you've got those processes in place.
Yeah, I have to agree. And recruitment doesn't work any time, full stop, right? It doesn't matter where it is. We've had, I would say that our failure rate with general recruitment would be no different to our failure rate with these ex-offender community, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think it's good. And I think the other thing that comes from it is that the people that work with these people, like the people who've been incarcerated, the rest of the team suddenly have exposure to something that they might not have otherwise had exposure to. And then that opens their heart and their eyes to a whole heap of people that they might not have otherwise noticed or seen or given the time of day to. But it suddenly changes their thinking.
I agree. I think it does. So there's, so that very first individual that I was in touch with who worked in the prison, we're still in touch with him, and he loves coming to visit us and just seeing where people can end up.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's particularly changed his life, but I do like to see him when he walks in there. He's always got some look of joy in his face.
Yeah. I think that you've probably, it met a need for you, but it met probably an even bigger need for him and for these other people that are working for you. And you may have been, a significant change in their path going forward because you made it easier and you've created that safe space. And more than that, there's relationships, there's community that they might not have otherwise had access to either.
I think that's significant. I think the point you make there, Kate, that the role our business and our people play in, I think, allowing ex-offenders to relearn those social skills and how to build relationships and what's acceptable and what's not. That's the hidden gem for them in coming to work and have a job because I've never been in prison like you. Maybe I should be. Maybe I should have been. But, the truth is that it's a different construct in the prison system, right? And how you interact with people and how you behave socially is quite different to how we do things in our world. So, I agree with that 100%. That hidden kind of gem for the people that find employment either at you know, where your friend works or at our factory, they certainly have that opportunity to rebuild their social skills and just the little things that are normal in our life and that are quite different in prison life.
Well, this has been really wonderful to talk about this. I just think it's such a great process, and I think it's a great gift that you've given these people, but also they've given you their skills and expertise, and it is a win-win. So
It certainly is. Yeah.
It's a great thing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right. Till next time.
You bet.
Cheers.
Thanks.